How's it going, guys? Alex here. Welcome back to another Dokkan Battle video. Today we are taking a look at the top 5 worst rebirths currently in the game, and as you can probably tell, there isn't going to be an STR type in this video. The reason for that is simply because the majority of them are actually pretty good units, and if you didn't know, my Jube also got a rebirth recently, and his rebirth is actually pretty good. So in today's video, every type by STR is included. And of course, if you have any ideas for future videos, let me know in the comment section down below. And keep in mind that for this video, we are going to be starting at number 5 and making our way up to number 1. Number 1 is obviously going to be the worst rebirth, but in the number 5 spot, we have the Int Super Saiyan Gohan. I was debating putting the Int Super Saiyan Trunks here instead of the Gohan, but instead I did go with Gohan because he does have a restriction on his passive, whereas Trunks doesn't, and he also has the Prepare for Battle link, which Gohan does lack. Gohan would hit harder, especially if you farm his super attack with the Super Saiyan Gohans from the Bojack event, but at the same time you could also level up the super attack of the Trunks with the summonable AGL Super Saiyan Trunkses. But even at the same super attack level, Gohan would hit harder because of his 12 key multiplier, but I do believe that Gohan is the inferior unit. You could argue that it's easy to maintain this restriction in a mono Int team, but if we were to consider their respective team, which is obviously Int, I would still put the Trunks above Gohan just simply because he does link slightly better with the units in there, specifically the new Super Saiyan Blue Vegeta, but there honestly isn't too much between them. But at face value, I do believe that Gohan is slightly worse than Trunks. In the number 4 spot, we have the Tech Super Saiyan Vegeta. He unfortunately only has extreme damage. He has Prepared for Battle and Golden Warrior, which are fairly common on a monotech team. But like the previous unit, he does have a restriction on his passive. And to me, this is one of the worst restrictions because you have to be below a certain percentage for it to activate. But when it does activate, he gets 3 key and a 2500 attack boost, which is fairly similar to Gohan's passive skill. And keep in mind that in a monotech team, this is a lot harder to maintain. You might have an easier time maintaining this if you have Golden Frieza, but at the same time, if he loses his restriction, you instantly lose the ability to tank, which means that you are most likely going to go back to full health to ensure that you don't die. But you can raise his super attack with the SR Tech Super Saiyan Vegeta unit, which does allow you to hit slightly harder with him, but in the end he is a fairly average unit. He won't be hitting anywhere near as hard as the other tech type units, but if you are in need of a replacement for your tech team, he is a decent replacement. But if we now move on to the number 3 spot, we have the physical Piccolo. He is somewhat similar to LR Piccolo, in the sense that his passive also gives a defensive boost. The only difference is that this Piccolo gives a percentage defensive boost, whereas LR Piccolo gives a flat out defensive boost. He isn't going to hit that hard because he does have a pretty low attack stat. He only causes extreme damage, so he was clearly made to be a defensive unit, which can be okay if you are willing to sacrifice a spot on your team. For example, if you have a unit like Vegito Blue on your monophysical team, and you wanted to improve his tanking, Piccolo would be a great partner for him, but at the same time you are giving up that one spot to optimize Vegito Blue, and that spot could have been used to add another hard hitter to your team, an orb changer, or even a stunner. And keep in mind that defensive boosts aren't that great. The defensive stat is probably one of the most obsolete stats in the game. Unless you have a really high defensive stat, it doesn't make that much of a difference. Some of your units like Vegito Blue will be able to tank hits better, but taking into account that he also has his own damage reduction and a pretty high defensive stat, which obviously adds to the amount that you can tank. And to touch on his links quickly, he doesn't really have any common key links, which is another problem that you would have to face if you decided to implement him into your monophysical team. But he does have another ability which I'm going to quickly touch on. He does greatly lower defense, which not too many heroes can do, and only a specific few physical type units can do that. But despite being able to greatly lower defense, it isn't very useful against most Dokkan events. Obviously, it is useful against the Broly event, but outside of that, it isn't very good. But as I said before, if you want to optimize units like Vegito Blue, he is a very good unit. So some of you may not agree with this decision, but I do believe that these two units are basically as bad as each other. Some of you may believe that one is worse than the other, but the 2 worst rebirths today are easily the AGL Super Saiyan Goku and the physical Majin Buu. Now the reason why I rank them the same is simply because they both do have their uses. For example, Goku is good against the Broly event, whereas Majin Buu is good against the Ultimate Gohan event. Majin Buu does hit harder than the Goku. Both of their super attacks can be farmed, but for a rebirth, Goku easily has one of the worst 12 key multipliers I've ever seen. Goku's 12 key multiplier sits at 115%, whereas Majin Buu has a 150 12 key multiplier, which is clearly a very big difference. They do both cause extreme damage, but at the same super attack level without any links active. Majin Buu almost hits for 10k more than the Goku, and keep in mind that this is before the unit's attack, which means that their damage calculations are obviously going to be higher. But the point is that Majin Buu can outdamage the Goku. Majin Buu easily has the better passive skill. To me, Goku has one of the most useless passive skills in the game. He gives himself 7 ki when HP is 50% or below, which to me is extremely useless. Especially when you consider that with a mono AGL team, you are very rarely going to be going below that percentage. He does have a 20% chance to stun, which can be useful in some situations, but the majority of the time you obviously want to get the counters off with Super Vegeta, which makes this unit pretty much useless outside of the Broly event unless you do want to stun consistently. But even then, his low chance of stunning isn't exactly worth it. And there are much better units that fit on a mono AGL team, such as Whis and Ultimate Gohan. But at the same time, the same can be said for Physical Buu. He doesn't really have a use outside of the Ultimate Gohan event. He can lower defense, but as I said before, it isn't that useful. And it's extremely common for villains to greatly lower defense now, which pretty much makes this ability on Buu useless. He doesn't have any common key links at all, unless you're going to run a few margins on your team, which most likely won't happen. But I do believe that Majin Buu has a much better passive skill than the Goku. He can recover 25% HP when you are below 40%, which can be useful in certain situations, but in the end I do believe that these two units are easily the worst rebirths to date. Goku does have better links, but Buu has a better passive skill. Buu also hits harder, but then you have Goku who can also stun. So to me they are pretty much even. There really isn't too much between them, and despite their uses they aren't very good units. So if we quickly move on to the team building section of this video, we honestly have several good units in here. We obviously have Super Vegeta, AGL Super Saiyan 2 Goku, we have the starter Goku, another AGL Super Saiyan 2 Goku, Super Saiyan Gohan, and we obviously have the unit that I believe is the worst rebirth in the game alongside Majin Buu. All of these units have Golden Warrior, which they obviously share with this Goku. He also shares the rebirth link with Super Saiyan Gohan, Super Saiyan 2 Goku, and this Super Saiyan 2 Goku as well. This Super Saiyan 2 Goku does not have the rebirth link for whatever reason. He does have Prepare for Battle, which is obviously fairly common in this team. But in the end, you're basically sacrificing several top tier units to implement the stunner. He doesn't really provide anything else unless you're taking on the Broly event, and even then you wouldn't need to take him. There are better options. But overall, this isn't a bad team at all, but you do have to sacrifice several top tier units, as I said before, to implement him. So you can instantly tell that the links are very weak here. He only shares the Shattering the Limit link or the Rebirth link with this Goku and the Trunks. Obviously every other unit does link pretty well, and again Majin Buu is the weak link here, and he doesn't really provide anything to this team. He obviously does have his healing ability, but in endgame it really isn't that useful. But if we now go ahead and implement Piccolo in there, if I can quickly find him, here we go. He has the same problem as Buu. He only shares the Shattering the Limit link with Goku and Trunks. The only unit that we have in here that provides key to all types is this Goku, which in my opinion isn't really worth it, because despite this Goku being very good, there are better replacements for him. But realistically, the only reason that you're going to run Piccolo is because of Vegeta Blue. To make his tanking better, obviously Vegeta Blue is nowhere near as good of a tank as Super Vegeta. But keep in mind that if you do want to implement Piccolo, you may struggle for key in certain situations. So unlike the other rebirths so far, this Vegeta actually fits pretty good on a monotech team. He shares a Prepared for Battle link with Bardock and Vegeta, and keep in mind that when you do get below that 50% restriction, he does give free key to himself, which is obviously extremely useful because there may be certain situations where you get Merges Matsu, Gotenks and Vegeta on the same turn, and even though he isn't linking any of them, his passive skill is giving a key boost, which will allow him to super regardless of key links. Now Gohan is pretty straightforward. He only shares the Rebirth link with Turles. He is self-sufficient and he does get key from Turles' passive, but overall I do believe that he doesn't fit that well onto this team, which is one of the reasons why I put Trunks above Gohan. But regardless of that, he is still an okay unit. He is nowhere near as bad as Majin Buu and Goku. But that is it, guys. I hope you all enjoyed it. I don't say this too often, but if you don't follow me on Twitter, I will leave the link in the comment section down below. It's the best way of interacting with me, especially if you have any questions or suggestions for future videos. But as always, if you are new, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe for more content. I hope you all have a great day, and I will catch you guys in the next one.